I was at first skeptical of the show's choice to have Marcy be possessed by the core, the surreal entity we see Andreas worshipping at the end of the first temple. I was kind of hesitant to see what kind of storytelling would result from that. I hoped it wouldn't be hackneyed or stereotypical. But at least at the time I'm writing this, I think it was a choice that paid off because of where they eventually decided to take it. Now, I still hope we have enough time after the defeat of Darcy to have Anne, Sasha, and Marcy work through the problems and tensions in their relationship, as well as Marcy's own relationship with her sense of self-worth in a way that doesn't feel banal or perfunctory or obvious. I think having Darcy be the big final villain of the show was a good decision that paid off. Now, this is not to dismiss Andreas' ability to be threatening, especially after what he did to Marcy, luring her into his confidence, making her believe that she could trust him, and then stabbing her through with a flaming sword. But Andreas has been kind of goofy in a lot of these Season 3 episodes. I wouldn't say he's necessarily incompetent completely, but a lot of his plans have failed. He sends a robot to go and try to kill Anne in the first half of this Season 3A, and it doesn't work. And then in the Christmas episode, he sends this other remote control robot after her. And he says, "Now why would I send a robot to do a newt's job?" And one of the newts almost says, "Well, that is still kind of what you're doing, sire." But thankfully, for that newt's sake, he doesn't say that. But Andreas is kind of ridiculous in Season 3A. And in a way I find quite enjoyable and reminiscent of a lot of the great Disney villains of yore, but also in a way that makes him seem a little bit less threatening than he seemed back in Season 2B. He indulges in childish complaining like a whiny gamer, especially in Froggy Little Christmas. And he has a bizarre love for Christmas paraphernalia and potato chips and other sorts of earth things. I'm not sure what to make of all this, but compared to the sneering, cold villainy of Darcy, he seems like an amateur. Darcy's presence is disturbing and eerie, and it's noticeable immediately. It's uncanny. Marcy is sweet, she's passionate, she's enthusiastic. Now, she's not a perfect person, and thankfully she isn't, because that would be boring and inane. She's flawed, and her refusal to be confrontational gets taken to such an extreme that she's afraid to tell her friends what she really wants, and she's anxious. She's terribly afraid to be alone, and so she acts out of desperation. And there are times when you can sense a little bit of resentment toward how she was treated on Earth, at least compared to how much better her life is in Amphibia, or at least how much better it was before Andrea stabbed her. But nonetheless, Marcy does not allow her intelligence and her ambition to curdle into self-aggrandizement and relentless criticism of those around her. She's not arrogant. If Darcy was only like Marcy, but connected to the great wisdom of the past, she wouldn't be terrifying. That's, I think, an obvious point. But what I would argue also is that if Darcy was nothing like Marcy, she would also not be as terrifying as she is in the show itself. If she was entirely unlike Marcy, sharing no traits or interests or values with Marcy, then one could detach one's view of her from one's view of Marcy and view her as being completely opposite to Marcy, just a parasite invading her body, and thus view Darcy as antagonistically as one views Andreas. Darcy is disturbing because she retains a lot of Marcy's mannerisms. One cannot look at how she acts and behaves and completely go, oh, that's not Marcy. Freud, to vastly oversimplify, defines the uncanny as the familiar and the known emerging from what appears to be completely strange and alien to our experience. And this is precisely the fear Darcy evokes. Though the production team has placed filters on Haley Jew's voice, it is still recognizably her voice, just stripped of all the bubbly ebullience with which she imbues it when she's playing the cheery Marcy. That winsome passion is replaced with cold, unfeeling relentlessness and power-seeking. Darcy still has some of Marcy's interests too, as evidenced in Froggy Little Christmas when we see Darcy wielding one of the 20-sided die that one assumes Marcy would use during a lot of her nerdy off-brand D&D games. We do not yet know how Marcy's perspective and her consciousness have been affected by the invasion of the hive mind, of the core. We don't quite know what she sees and how she perceives the world, because we haven't had any episodes from her perspective since she was taken over. But it definitely appears like she has not been entirely erased. Her consciousness is still there. It is just fused and synthesized with all of Andreas' ancestors, the great conquerors of Newtopia's past. Her psyche has not been overridden. The parts of her that are still useful to Darcy, her intelligence, her cunning, and the parts of her that are just neutral to Darcy, like her nerdiness, those are still preserved. But what's not are the qualities that Darcy finds no use for. Those being her indecisiveness, her lack of self-confidence, and also her empathy and her tenderness. Darcy is not shy and reserved like Marcy was, and that would be good under different circumstances. Part of me is almost happy that Marcy is finally willing to assert what she wants. But of course, under the direction of the core, what she wants is pure, unbridled, megalomaniacal power-seeking. She wants to dominate and conquer. In scenarios in which an antagonistic entity possesses a character, it's typically common for the hero to be able to stand up and say, I know that's not really you in there. But saying something like this would be a lot harder in the case of Darcy. There is not a clear dichotomous separation between the host and the possessor. That dichotomy has been confused and distorted. If Anne and Sasha see that Darcy has taken on not only Marcy's body, but a lot of Marcy's mannerisms and interests, they will be repulsed, of course, but they will also be kind of confused and almost perhaps conflicted. The fight to free Marcy will not be as easy and straightforward as they had originally expected it to be. Now, I do not know what the final battle is going to look like, and it is true, oftentimes, that final battles are my least favorite parts of these animated series that are appropriate for younger audiences. Even Avatar: The Last Airbender and Gravity Falls two of the greatest animated shows ever made are let down in their final episodes to a certain extent, because no amount of closure provided by good triumphing over evil can replicate the nuances and complexities of the show as a whole. Still, I have confidence in this show. The dramatic parts of its storytelling have never been the problem. It's great at reveling in those nuances, those moments of uncertainty. And even though the show remains optimistic through all the darkness, it's willing to engage with that darkness. Willing to see that you can't just pretend that darkness doesn't exist and just paper over all the real rifts that form between people just by singing Kumbaya and defeating the evil villain. Darcy is terrifying because Darcy is uncanny. And I think Darcy will only become more terrifying as the show progresses. I'm fascinated to see what it does with her as it goes along. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching more Amphibia. I really love that last episode, Froggy Little Christmas. It really demonstrated a lot of what I want to see the show doing in the future, and I can't wait to see what the show does from here. So anyway, if you liked what you saw today, don't forget to comment and subscribe. Tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. I promise you all that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.